Administration and certainly our delegation and those who are watching from the comforts of home. Welcome to our public meeting this evening. On a roll call, everyone's present. I believe Councilor Tonio is on personal leave and will not be at the meeting this evening. Members of council, we did have an electronic in-camera meeting. Was held earlier this evening at 5:15 p.m., which was closed to the public under Section 239(2)(c) of the Municipal Act 2001, which permits a meeting or part of a meeting to be closed to the public when a subject matter to be considered is of a proposed or pending acquisition or a disposition of land by the municipality or local board. So at this meeting, council gave direction to administration regarding a proposed acquisition of land by the municipality. So members of council, any disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda is presented to you this evening? None. Thank you. And that'll be obviously in the minutes of. And speaking of the minutes, the regular council meeting on March 23rd, that the minutes be duplicated and delivered to the members be adopted. Deputy Mayor Bichetti, support Councilor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. We do have a supplementary item this evening as well, that the supplementary agenda be added to the regular meeting agenda regarding communications item from the municipality of Lakeshore dated April 13, 2021 on the shoreline management plan public consultation event, and that be adopted. Councilor Houston, Councilor Altenhoff. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to delegations. Member of council, I believe our director will be speaking on behalf of the Caritas Court Homeowners Association. If I'm correct, Ms. Moy, that Mr. Harris is not available to speak this evening.
Mr. Harris is here with us this evening, so he would like to make a presentation, but if council would like to move up the Planning and Building Services Report number 2021-15 on the agenda, the Director of Planning can also speak to the report.
Okay, very good. Could I have that report moved up? Councilor Jobin, Councilor Altenhoff. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Okay, Mr. Hillman. I don't see Mr. Harris.
Yes, Mr. Harris is there, I think.
Yes, Your Worship. Mr. Harris
Just waiting for him to come on.
Okay.
There we go. Oh, lost him.
There he is.
Hello, I'm here.
There you go. Yeah, I'd like to be right where that picture is behind you too.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for having us. And we're mainly here just to say that we do approve of the planning report, and thank you for that.
Okay. Mr. Hillman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Good evening, and to everyone who's watching. Yes, so Mr. Harris and on behalf of the owners of everyone in the Caritas Court area, attended the town and put in a request for an improvement to their fence. Actually, Sean, if you were to turn to, if the report is brought forward, just to give some context here, to page 160 of the agenda, it's attachment 1 to the report. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Mayor and Council, Caritas Court is a small plan of subdivision. Actually, these are properties that are individually owned. It's not a condominium. Developed a number of years ago, and there, as you would be familiar, there's a fence abutting the rear yards of the properties inside Caritas Court, which is just on the west side of Brighton Road. And the fence basically delineates this residential development as the yellow line on this image from the Tecumseh Road intersection and from Tecumseh Road itself. It's 5 feet in height, and it's wood, but it also has on page 156, Sean, it has some brick, basically poles that are separating parts of the wood elements of the fence. There has been a couple of things have come to light. One is there was a recent accident at this location that damaged a portion of the wood fence, which has necessitated some form of replacement of the fence. With that, there's also been a concern brought forward from residents who live in the Caritas Court development that generally, and the report summarizes this in some detail, the activity, the light, the noise, et cetera, that is occurring and has increased from their perspective since these developments were constructed in such a way that it's adversely affecting the enjoyment of the properties, the residential properties in Caritas Court. So Mr. Harris and others came forward and requested if, when they go to replace the fence that has been damaged and it requires replacement otherwise, could they go to a higher height? Right now it peaks out at 5 feet. The fence bylaw for the municipality establishes a maximum height of 6 feet. So the bylaw does allow for council to consider increases greater than the maximums allowed in the bylaw. After some discussion with Mr. Harris, there was a lot of consideration around noise impacts. And what we indicated was that generally for a noise wall, a proper professionally completed noise study is undertaken. That is not something they wanted to do. And once we talked through all the issues, it was recognized that there was a fence just to the north of this development that's currently at 7 feet in height, a wooden fence. And it was decided that under the circumstances of the situation, the location, that there was merit in considering a slightly higher fence than that permitted by the bylaw, and that in fact, the abutting property to the north already has a similar circumstance. And that we could recommend to council consideration for a vinyl fence with the caveat that there really wasn't a noise study to validate any noise attenuation, but the residents feel there would be some benefit. And secondly, that there are still some design considerations being undertaken on how to address the increased height for the posts that separate each segment of the fence, and that any improvement to the fence would be consistent across the entire extent of the development where it's abutting Brighton Road. So with that, Mr. Mayor, that's in summary the content of the report, and we are in support of the request. And in fact, when the request initially came in, they were seeking, as I recollected, 8-foot fence. But after some discussion and consideration and looking at the context and the impact from the road, we all agreed that we could support 7 feet. And the recommendation is reflective of that from administration. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hillman. Any questions or comments to Mr. Hillman in the report? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question for Mr. Harris. I believe there's 5 or 6 homes that are on, based on that map that was shown, that really abut Brighton Road, that would basically be affected by this new height, correct?
That's correct. 6 homes.
Okay, are they all aware this is coming to council and they're all okay with that? Because I'm wondering why it was 5 feet originally. Maybe, you might be impeding someone's sight line that they wanted 5 feet, now it's going up. So just want to make sure that those residents are aware that, they're all in agreement with that new height.
All residents are in agreement and very anxious to proceed if possible.
Very
All right.
good, thank you.
Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, just to other members of council and Mr. Harris, I did have communications with another individual on Cardias Court, and I did speak with Mr. Hillman about this topic as well. The interesting thing to note is, immediately, behind the proposed fence is also, a series of trees which are probably in excess of 10 plus feet high. So I think if I'm understanding correctly, the group feels that may attenuate noise, may attenuate a light and some other potential, vehicular engagements with the surrounding area. And I did run by that place quite a bit, and I know there are within the vicinity, at least to the best of my knowledge, and as was indicated by Mr. Hillman, there's at least one other property at about that height with the fence as well. So I'm fine with what's proposed, and I'd be willing to support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the uniqueness of the project or that Caritas Court as well is that those are the backyards, and it's a very busy intersection there as well. And in particular with the development on Old Tecumseh Road, the old Puds Marina development as well, it certainly give it some privacy and certainly maybe not so much on the noise, but certainly on the light, traffic lights and so forth that are on Old Tecumseh Road onto that property certainly would do certainly restrict the light impingement into those backyards. Okay, any further questions or comments? Then on the report, Councillor Alton, prepared to move the report. Thank you, and supported by Deputy Mayor Buchetti. On the report, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimous. No bill of fence, Mr. Harris.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
All right, take care.
We will do that. Thank you very much.
All right, members of council, our next delegation, we have two delegations, both on the same subject. We have first Samuel and Robert Katzman, owners of Greentown Cannabis, retail, and it's in regards to retail cannabis stores. Okay, I can see half of.
Oh,
There we go. Yeah, I get cozy, I guess, but.
yeah, that's okay.
It's hard
All
to deal
right.
with. It's hard to deal with a better looking son. You know, that's my trouble. So.
I'm not going to comment on that, but certainly, gentlemen, welcome to our meeting this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for allowing us to speak for a couple of minutes. We've sent in advance some bullet points. Just to give you a little bit of background, when the federal government legalized cannabis, I moved out to Calgary with Sam and my wife. We opened up the first cannabis store in central Alberta, 2018. And I'm here to tell you that our background is in the hospitality and tavern business. The cannabis business absolutely does not disrupt any community that it's been in. It's been nothing but a positive financial force for the owners, for the employees, and for the community as well. There's absolutely no evidence of any secondary adverse effects in terms of reduction in commercial properties around these retail centers or residences that are relatively nearby. And it's an opportunity for young people and older people to get into business. It's a very highly regulated business. A point I want to make to you is when we were in Alberta, we were working with the Alberta government. And then we came to Ontario because we saw Ontario was going to open up. Ontario has got a real good system going. They're extremely regimented. And everything about them, as we compare them to out west, is they show themselves as much better managers. You know, before you can work and be an employee in a cannabis retail shop, you have to take a special course. You have to have police checks. There's just no nonsense in this business at all. It's a fantastic opportunity from all different sides. You know, to get into these businesses are the minimum is $300,000, and you can go up to beyond $1 million depending on what kind of inventory you want to carry. And the shops are beautiful. In order to compete, you got to invest a lot of money. in building very upscale, modern stores. They're often referred to as Apple stores. So they're places where the community can be proud that they're there. There's no such nonsense as loitering. These are things that people were concerned about when we first started in the cannabis retail space. None of these problems materialized. First of all, every significant mall developer will take cannabis stores. RioCan, for instance. We can get in anywhere in terms of cannabis stores because they've proven not to be a problem. They've proven to be helpful to the community. Right now, we operate two brands. One is Greentown, Sam and I, and we also operate the We Store. You may have seen those around. And there's just not one problem. When you compare them to the tavern business, my goodness, where alcohol is related, alcohol is involved, there's just no comparison. There's always a concern. We forever live in fear in the alcohol business, which we compete in as well, with confrontations, with silly behavior when the bar closes. There's just no comparison. Cannabis has not proven to be disruptive to the community whatsoever. So, I mean, your needs, you're certainly as a community, your needs are different than us. We're independent businessmen, but it's a fantastic opportunity, I think, for everyone to be involved. Sam, you may have some thoughts.
Yeah, I kind of want to just touch on some of the thoughts and points my father made. I want to go through the fact that the AGCO has done a really thorough job protecting youth. It's been a huge mandate of theirs, and I think that it's really important. We see it as a benefit. It goes as far as advertising is not allowed in any place that youth may see it or if it's attractive to youth. On top of that, every single product that we sell at our stores is inspected by Health Canada to ensure its safety and consistency. I also wanted to add that a common misconception in cannabis stores is that it's young kids loitering, causing trouble. But what we've seen in our stores, and even dating back to Alberta, is that the average age of our customer is 45 years old.
Yeah.
And the products are being made in today's times that are kind of tailored towards these people. Things as CBD creams,
Edibles,
topicals, and so on and so forth. And to add to my father's point, I mean, our store employs 32 individuals, which I think is fantastic for the community.
each store.
Each store is
32.
32 individuals, and each one of them has to pass a comprehensive test called a CANCEL, as well as have a clean police clearance. So I wanted to touch on that. Also, legal cannabis has done a fabulous job in, slowing down and in time eliminating the black market, illegal sale of cannabis.
That's the two mandates. The two main mandates of the AGCO, alcohol and gaming, is the protection of youth. They send in secret shoppers to check that you're checking proof. Everyone gets checked. Their identification gets checked. No one gets through the door. I mean, we're checking people that are 85 years and over, because if you are ever caught selling underage, it's very quick that you could lose your license. So protecting youth is a main mandate, and getting rid of the black market, the illegal market, where people are forced to buy stuff, or used to be forced to buy stuff that just wasn't safe. You didn't know what was in it.
So
I wanted to.
Yeah, so those are two important points. I personally work on the store level on a daily basis, and I do see a lot of customers travel from the town of Tecumseh to frequent our stores. And like I said, many of them are older. These stores are really beautiful, outside and inside. One store nicer than the other. And the majority of them have their own parking as well, as to not take up municipality parking, because operators understand the importance of having parking. So, legal cannabis is safe. It's here to stay. And the stores are very well run. Like my father mentioned, it's a $300,000 minimum capital investment to get into the market. And so people who are getting involved in this are serious business people. They're people who want to operate the right way. And for lack of a better term, they have no choice because the AGCO that's the only way you're allowed to operate.
These are not Cheech and Chong businesses. If you're going to get into this business, you have to know what you're doing. And the regimentation of the AGCO is fabulous. They count every gram. Every gram is accounted for. Our systems are so computerized, no gram can go missing. There's no theft. Everything is just so super organized. And there's one thing that I want to bring out, and I'm sure that you've discussed it, and that is the overcrowding of the space. And I just want to be forthright about that. Because you have places, you have places right near you, what is it, the Shiny Bud, and places right near you in the Sobeys Plaza and so on. But I'm telling you, they're already being weeded out. The spaces are too crowded. But they're being weeded out. The market is taking care of the people that don't have the capital, the people that don't have the experience. And it's a situation where it's already beginning to even out without stores on every block. So that's another thing. That's, if I could say there's only one thing that community is concerned about is overcrowding of the space. But the market is dealing with that problem very, very quickly, very, very quickly. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know how to market, if you don't know how to control your business, if you don't know how to manage your resources, mainly employees, if you don't know how to treat them properly and develop a strong business model, you're just not going to remain in business. And that's what we're seeing across the province.
So we wanted to thank you for giving us this time to present. We really do appreciate it. If there's any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
I want to say we'd like to invite, if any of you folks would like to come into one of our stores, we'd love to bring you in and show you how it's run, show you the back of the house, show you how organized we all have to be, not just us, but everyone in the business. So, I mean, that's an offer. We'd love to bring you in, invite you in and show you, be our guest. And I think you'll be impressed.
Thank you.
I want one, I'm sorry, my son will kill me for this. One point I want to make, it's really important. The fact is 18% of the population, this is data coming out of Toronto from the AGCO. Right now, 18% of the population is engaged in cannabis.
It's going to go to 75.
It's going to 75 or 80%. We see it, someone was showing Beach Grove Golf Course in the background. We're Beach Grove members. I had I can't say his name, of course, but I had a prominent orthopedic surgeon call me over on the green, tell me that he's got some issues with sleeping, and can I give any advice? Now, we can't give advice on anything medical. We're not allowed to do that. But everyone is getting involved with this product. It's safer, it's healthier, it's cheaper, less expensive than alcohol. And, it's where society is going. There's no doubt about it. I wanted to throw that in.
Thank you, guys.
Before you go, is there any questions or comments? I know we have another delegation as well. I would welcome if there's no questions at this stage here, if you want to stay online, and until we finish up with the next delegation. So I'm going to ask him.
Of course. Yeah, with pleasure.
Councillor Dowie and then Councillor Houston.
Hey, thank you, Worship, and thank you, Mr. Katzman, for your delegation tonight. I guess I'd like to understand a bit more about the wholesale side or the supply side. I understand the Ontario Cannabis Store continues to have a very robust role in supply, and I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that in terms of what that regulatory environment looks like.
So the Ontario Cannabis Store, I guess to answer your question, they have a large role in this as being the main or the only wholesaler. I must give them credit that they've done a fabulous job working with the retailer. They work every day on getting new products, the right products for the right people. And what their role is in the supply chain is they're trying to provide the retailer such as us support the best opportunity to learn, the best opportunity to get the product that you want. And as time has gone on, my goodness, when we started this in Alberta, there was no product. And to be honest, the product was poor.
Yeah.
Dry, very poor. And now the Ontario Cannabis Store has worked like hand in hand with licensed producers to change that narrative.
To give you an example, we carry 362 SKUs of product. Unheard of. When you go to Michigan, they carry 22, 23. But the Ontario Cannabis Store offers us hundreds and hundreds of SKUs of tested, guaranteed, safe product. Much better than Alberta ever did.
Yeah, a lot more quality.
A lot more quality, for sure. Some of our best suppliers, you know, our best supplier is your neighbor, is Afria, is become a really, really, really good supplier, real quality supplier. A lot of people around the area have turned out to be the best there is, right in our backyard. Out of all, even these people that boast about British Columbia cannabis, the best cannabis is still grown in our backyard. I assure you of that.
Well, we grow good tomatoes too.
Yeah. True.
Councilor Houston?
Thank you, Worship. And, Sam and Robert, thanks for the delegation. The one question I have, and I'm not sure if you can answer it or not for me, but do you have any potential, sites in mind or any locations at this point that you've identified of any interest within your municipality?
You know, I'll be frank with you. We did this same dog and pony show in LaSalle, and I don't think we had much impact. LaSalle elected to get into the cannabis business, but we've been having nice chats with LaSalle. We do have some locations in mind. We have 2 locations in mind in Tecumseh. I live in Tecumseh, and we know the community, we know the people. So we do have a couple locations that we're viewing right now. And I probably shouldn't say because there's competition out there, but I think you'd be proud of them. They're retail centers. They're in one of your plazas in the city. It's 1,700 square feet, the first one. And if you folks decide to, if you elect to join the cannabis train, we're going to move very swiftly to open a store.
And I do think that, like my dad mentioned before, you guys would be really proud of us if you decide to opt in and we do open as operators in your community.
We
Okay,
see, we're sophisticated. It's not just us. Everyone in the business knows that they have to be part of the solution in every community. We're building an association. We know we have to contribute to the community. We're always doing charitable acts. We have an operation in Chatham. We're working with mental health. We even did a great thing. We raised a couple $1,000s for Humane Society. So we're proud of that. And all our employees are involved with that. It's an important part to be in business these days, that you have this social conscience and that you know how to give back to the community. And it's not just us. We're not boasting about our own platform. We're all doing it.
Okay, Councilor Jobin.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you both for joining us this evening, and thanks for the presentation. It was just the beginning of this coming out to the municipality. It's more just entering unfamiliar territory, basically, at the time, right? And the unknowns. And when you mentioned the protection of youth and where your businesses are going to maybe put the shovel in the ground, so to speak, those were a majority of the concerns. So I do appreciate you guys coming this evening and sharing your experiences and the information. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Any further questions? Well, okay, so I guess my comments is that we wanted to take, we never said never. We basically wanted to see how the industry, because obviously it was new. It was, a lot of the unknowns, the province, couldn't answer. I was on a provincial board, I still am, but when this was brought up by the Ontario government back in the day, and they couldn't even answer a lot of the questions that we were certainly asking. And I'll be quite honest with you, both Sam and Robert. My point was the municipalities were left out in the distribution of taxation. And it's not, the feds and the province, and then the amount of money that they were allocating for municipalities, I'll be honest with you, was pittance. And not knowing what the impact of the community would be if, required more policing, more this, more that, more infrastructure, this, that, to deal with it. $10,000 is not a big amount of money. And so that was my issue, and it's still my issue. I still believe the distribution of taxation, you made the comment in terms of there's money to be made. I agree with you. And we made a mistake 100 years ago after Prohibition on alcohol. We should have been able to get more money municipally in that regard. So that was my point. I wanted to have a look-see and how things were going to evolve, how the industry was going to evolve, and so forth. But in terms of the crop itself and so forth, it is a legal crop, and through government legislation, federally and certainly provincially, and that's the reality. And for many, even on growers and others, that's the big issue with the municipalities are trying to deal with, and certainly in that regard. So if you followed a little bit in terms of what one of the medicinal growers in the difficulties in another part of the community we've been faced with and so forth. Again, it's dealing with a legal commodity. And so for me, it was never, I'm opposed to it and so forth. Listen, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. So I certainly am quite familiar with, with cannabis in that regards, but certainly here we are. And that's why, you're here as a delegation. We certainly want to hear from folks and from the community as a whole. I know there's one in Sobeys, an outlet there, being there, and I never said that's the end all be all for us, certainly in the area. But I'm glad to hear in terms that as businessmen in the community is that, you want to be part of the community, as a whole. So I certainly welcome that in many regards. So if there's no further questions or comments at this stage, I ask if you want to stay, hang tight in terms of the meeting itself. We do have another delegation in that, and then certainly there's an item in the agenda here that would have to be dealt with, and instead of giving you a phone call tomorrow, you'd probably be better off to be here and hear what the end result's going to be. So
with
you want to just hang tight?
With pleasure, we'd like to stay with you.
Okay, perfect. And so
we're gonna just mute and turn our camera off. Is that the proper?
Perfect.
procedure?
Yeah,
Okay,
you can
great.
hear us.
Thank you again.
All right, thank you. All right, our next delegation is Melissa Bowe, also speaking on the cannabis. There we go.
Hello, everyone. So I just want to say hello, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and councillors. I'm just going to read the speech that I put together. So as you know, my name is Melissa, and I want to thank you for having me here today. I recognize that you guys all have a copy of my verbal presentation for review. Keeping time in mind, I'm just going to spare the beginning about myself and how it came that I'm sitting here with you today. And if you haven't read it yet, I would encourage you to read it. I'm one of the owners of Ginger's House of Hemp here in Tecumseh. We would like to expand into cannabis retail sales, and I'm here today to ask that the town of Tecumseh consider its position with respect to opting out of cannabis sales within the municipality. The arrangement for today's conversation is interesting to me because I'm here to represent a true mom and pop style small business where planning growth as business allows. As we just saw, the additional delegates represent an established and growing business within the cannabis industry. I had mentioned in my original letter to Mayor McNamara and Council that I appreciate that there is a level of concern and uncertainty surrounding the emerging cannabis industry. However, I also believe in having a healthy, sustainable, and responsible system of distribution, regulation, and enforcement that's effective and inclusive can provide a widespread benefit to the community. In the December 11, 2018 meeting, 4 of the 5 strategic priorities for Tecumseh were met, so hopefully we can check that last box tonight. Tecumseh and Lakeshore were the first local municipalities to make a decision on private cannabis retail, and they had chosen to opt out. Both towns taking a responsible wait and watch approach, saying no for now, but not never. This position was taken for various different reasons, and I did review past council meetings, I read articles, and I listened to the interview with Mayor McNamara and Dan McDonald for reference and perspective. I've always been under the impression Tecumseh was open-minded regarding cannabis. In 2015, approval was provided for the medical cannabis facility on number 3 Highway in Oldcastle. Even though it had faced pushback from the residents, it had still been able to move forward. The main concern from residents at the time was smell and light pollution from cannabis production, and neither of those concerns are presented by cannabis retail stores. One resident had said, "We're not against cannabis facilities. The residents opposing the facility were just hoping for a different location for that particular facility." Mayor McNamara had said back then, "We've got to look at the business itself. We have to remember it is a legal product, and it's always good to listen on both sides and break down a lot of the fears. This is something new." I do respect that statement immensely. It is something new, and with that, there is a lot of stigma to reduce with regards to cannabis, and education is going to be the key here. Also, in 2020, Peak Processing, a cannabis food and drink manufacturer, was granted licensing to start production, also located in Oldcastle. Opening up retail sales adds the ability for not only my business, but the other 2 existing cannabis-related businesses that I have mentioned here, the opportunity for growth, and it would incidentally allow for additional businesses to open up shop within the town. On Tuesday, October 22nd of 2019, Lakeshore had revised its decision and opted in to brick and mortar private cannabis retail. Even though opting in at this later date was not as lucrative as waiting, it gave them time to make their considerations. Those in favor talked about the benefits of cannabis use and the importance of personal liberty. Providing access shows that civil liberties are a priority for council to provide to members of the community, sending a positive message that this is in fact a progressive community. Lakeshore officials also surveyed 11 municipalities that already have retail stores. The report to council stated none of the municipalities could identify a single complaint directly related to cannabis retail stores in the community. A sentiment that was reiterated by Simon Reed, who is the owner of Boom Dom in Windsor. He stated, "The neighbors have welcomed us with open arms." Lakeshore also hosted a community survey. Residents had said with a majority to move forward, said Deputy Mayor Tracy Bailey. Opting in is the right thing to do. The town of LaSalle was presented with a staff report to council prior to its council meeting on Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021, listing 19 community benefits of cannabis retail, and it listed no detriments. So as you may know, just a few weeks ago on March 23rd, the town of LaSalle did opt in to private cannabis sales, and the town council passed that motion unanimously. So as you can see by comparison, the fears have been reduced, and there was no direct increase to use of municipal services and virtually no disruption to residents in municipalities who have opted in, and there would be no real reason to think that there would be in the future. Retail locations follow a lengthy list of regulations regarding store premises, surveillance, security, training of employees, advertising and promotion, and prevention of unlawful activities. All stores are required to provide educational information in stores for shoppers on harm reduction. Being that these stores are so highly regulated, they by nature provide a mechanism to keep the product out of the hands of minors. Retail locations are required to maintain a high level of social responsibility and make sure that every sale is a responsible one. Another apprehension that has been brought up on different occasions is store proximity to schools. Retail outlets cannot be located near a school or a private school as defined in the Education Act. A cannabis retail store must be 150 meters from the property line of a school. Also, ingestion by smoking or vaping is not permitted at schools, on school property, and at school-related activities. In addition, smoking or vaping cannabis is prohibited in all public areas within 20 meters of these grounds. Keeping this in mind, along with any other bylaw the town has enacted with regards to the Smoke-Free Ontario Act. By integrating cannabis retail into a community, it does provide a financial benefit. I know Mayor McNamara had stated AM 800 March 24th that the majority of that financial benefit is realized by provincial and federal governments. But if we just take a second to look a little deeper, you can see the financial benefits to the community would also come from spin-off support, because we use local contractors to build our space, local security, local telecommunication, financial institutions, accountants, just to name a few. Again, Simon Reed, owner of Boomdom, had stated in 18 months, they have been able to give back approximately $100,000 to local businesses. This is just a small business currently with one store. Also, where cannabis retail outlets are located, there's naturally an increase to traffic to surrounding businesses, helping them thrive. Putting money into the hands of people who spend money in the community brings a benefit to those who own small businesses within the community, and it creates a very positive domino effect. This is, of course, on top of any of the financial benefit that the town could possibly see from the provincial government. All cannabis sold in retail locations must come from the OCS, the Ontario Cannabis Store. The OCS is focused on serving the needs of cannabis consumers through growing access to tested, regulated, Health Canada approved products that are traceable, fairly priced, and provide legal jobs in communities across Ontario and Canada. In the OCS Q3 report, they stated that between October 1, 2020 and December 31, 2020, 30 million grams of legal cannabis was sold in Ontario. Even with in-person shopping restrictions brought on by COVID, of those legal sales, 88%, yes, 88% happened in a legal brick and mortar shop. Therefore, expanding physical access to unserved or underserved communities is the key to continued growth. With private retail stores available, the majority of customers that prefer to access legal cannabis are coming to expect a true retail experience. It's clear to see that this is great news for small business. Cannabis stores are a legitimate business that have the potential to employ large numbers of people with a healthy mix of full and part-time well-paying positions. So just to reiterate, I am asking council to reconsider its position and opt in to private cannabis sales. And I want to thank you for your time and consideration.
All right,
Do you
thank
have any
you.
questions?
Yeah, questions? Yes, Councilor Jobin.
You through, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions. I also want to thank Melissa for her presentation and the amount of information that you provided to us this evening. Again, like you put a lot of time into it, and I have read your story, and I just thank you for sharing all of your interests and for being a part of the community.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Melissa, for your certainly well-researched and well-delivered presentation to us tonight. I've made a number of excellent points about the benefits to the community. And certainly, I wanted to just check, you are an existing business owner here.
Yes.
And so I guess I'd like to understand a bit more about the long-term viability of your business. What would you, I mean, consider clearly, if we're left outside of the environment, would you have to consider leaving our community and going just a few meters up into another municipality?
Absolutely. The decision has actually already been made. So based on what's going to happen here tonight, and once you guys make your decision, whether it be today or a few weeks from now, is going to directly impact my business. If the answer is to opt out, then I am going to have to move, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome.
Any further questions or certainly comments? Okay, now it's time. All right, well, thank you very much, Melissa, for for your in-depth letter. And I did also have that opportunity to peruse your request. I'm still of mind that the taxation piece, I think municipalities should get more of the share from the provincial and federal government. I certainly, I know the benefit of small business creating jobs and so forth into the community are important. And we've always been, outside of this one here, as we stated before, a wait and see approach to see how things would evolve into a new industry. But we are a community that certainly we have over 1,100 businesses in our small community. So we are very cognizant of the fact that the job opportunities that small business people do provide, and 80% of all jobs created are from the small business community. So I'm very well aware of the importance of the small business entrepreneurs within not only our community, but certainly the whole region. So I certainly want to take that opportunity to express that. And again, thank you for coming this evening before us at this stage of the development, I would say, of the cannabis industry. And so at this stage here, members of council, in order for us as a municipality to move forward on this, we need certainly a motion to reconsider the decision decided upon council at their December 11, 2018 meeting to opt out of cannabis sales in the town. Would require a motion at tonight's meeting carried by 2/3 majority of the members present and voting. And upon successful, if the motion was to pass the reconsider, then a motion to direct administration to review certainly and report back on the request for retail cannabis sales in the town could be then certainly be given. And council could also acknowledge the receipt as well from the presentations of both Mr. Katzman and Sam and Robert, and as well as Melissa Bowe's submission as well. So it's up to council at this stage. I pass it on to you, Councilor Jobin.
Certainly, I would absolutely like to move that motion that we have administration bring back a report for the option to opt back in.
We're ahead of ourselves on this one. We
okay.
need a motion to reconsider our December 11, 2018 meeting. That'd be the first one.
Absolutely.
With tonight. So if you're prepared to move that,
yes,
then I'm looking for a second to that motion. Deputy Mayor Bichetti seconds the motion that we reconsider the decision decided upon council at our December 11, 2018 meeting to opt out of cannabis sales in the town. And that would require a motion, and that's the motion's in play. Any discussions on the motion? Councilor Dowie and Councilor Altenhoff.
So thank you, Worship. Just more for my clarity, the reconsideration motion has an end result of the municipality having taken no decision rather than giving a yes? Or is it a firm yes to opting into retail cannabis?
It's not a firm yes. What it is reconsideration, and then a motion after that to direct administration to review and then bring a report back to council. And at such time, then council will make the decision.
Oh, thank you, Worship. So just a supplementary. So the reconsideration motion comes first, and then there's a motion for the direction following that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Who else? Somebody else had their hand up as well. Councilor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, no, I think my question and kind of your listing of the events that have to occur clear up my mind, or any uncertainties I had in my mind. I think depending upon what happens here, I may have a question or a comment on something that may be forthcoming afterwards. So I'll engage then. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Any further questions or comments on the reconsideration?
Actually,
Go ahead, Councilor Houston. You're muted.
oh, sorry. Just to clarify, we do require, and through you, we do require 2/3 to reconsider. So just to clarify, 2/3 would be because Councilor Toniol is absent. We would require like 6.
No, well, Councilor Houston, just hang on to that. I'm just going to bring on Senator Clerk, Ms. Moy.
Thank you, through you, your worship. In answer to Councillor Houston, so it's a 2/3 majority of the members present and voting.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. That clarifies it.
Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, worship. So just through you to the clerk, I remember I was not on the same side as the other members of council on this last time out. And I'm wondering, does that matter in terms of the vote here? Or is it just if you're present, you can participate, or you can have your vote counted?
Yep. Okay, any further questions or comments on the reconsideration? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carries unanimous. Okay. So now I need a motion to direct administration to review and report back on the request for retail cannabis sales in the town. Could be then be given. Councilor Dowie moves, support. Councilor Jobin. Any further questions or comments? Councilor Dowie, Councilor Altenhoff.
Thank you, your worship. I remember very well the previous discussion, and I recall that the health unit was very much against private retailing of cannabis, and then they cited the addictions research that they had done on youth, and felt that the best option was not to proceed. And I also have in front of me at the moment the report of administration, which really threw caution to council's decision to be. So there are a couple of things I'd like to include in the as part of the motion. One, that we obtain an update from the health unit as to whether their perspective has changed in light of 2+ years of private retailing. Second, from our own administration with respect to the original report. And third, I'd love to see actually a resident poll or survey enacted so that we can understand the viewpoints of our residents on this.
All right, administration, yeah. Madam CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm a little bit reticent to commit to undertaking a survey of residents. We have no such budget for a representative survey, and a simple polling would not necessarily hold any statistical significance associated with the outcome. So I'm, sort of caught in the crosshairs of wanting to make sure that anything that we would do in that manner would be representative, and secondly that this would require a fair bit of work and budget that we had not anticipated in this year's work plan. Certainly prepared to go to the Board of Health and get an update from them, but I am a little reticent to commit to a survey.
Councilor Dowie, supplementary.
Through you to the administration, the free Survey Monkey tool is what I would have in mind. Not so much something that's statistically significant, but rather just to get feedback in general?
Once again, I know that we have used Survey Monkey, but if you think back to, or think to the biannual citizen satisfaction survey, there's an awful lot that goes in behind those surveys to ensure representativeness. And I'm not sure that you would be getting
Fair representation.
that's representative or reliable in terms of feedback. That's my position on it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dowie.
Certainly final follow-up on that. So through you to the administration, our budget consultation that we do, which asks residents what their priorities are, what process does that follow in order to make sure it's statistically representative?
Sorry, through the mayor, is the councillor seeking clarification on the biannual citizen satisfaction survey?
Correct. I believe that's the direction, or is it on polling?
No, it's with respect to the budget consultation that we undertake in the month of September, that we ask residents what their priorities are that they would like council to consider. And so that is the kind of consultation exercise that I had in mind versus anything that had a demographic information or had a specific polling value. So more so to understand what the issues that residents may wish for us to consider our decision-making be brought forward, rather than anything in terms of yes or no.
So in response through you, Mr. Mayor, the budget does not purport to have any sort of polling or statistical representation. And I believe in the councillor's earlier comments, he used the word polling, which was the flag that went up in my mind as to reliability and statistical reliability, which we do use when we are talking about the community survey that's done on a biannual basis, which then has a process behind it to ensure that it is statistically valid. So it was in reference to that earlier use of the term in his ask that I raised my hand.
Councillor Jobin.
Councillor Dowie, I can appreciate your interest in having to do a poll, but I feel like we're going on almost 3-4 years, if not more. I mean, we were even talking about cannabis and coming to municipalities before it was even introduced to municipalities. And I feel like we can obtain enough data in the report to show the fears before, and the data obtained now with policies in place and how the current businesses are complying and their restrictions and regulations. Those were a lot of the fears that we already know is why we opted out. And now we see how the program is going and how these operations have formulated and operating. And I feel like our administration will provide that in their report to us for us to make an easy yes or no decision.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Bukaty.
Thank you, your mayor. When we voted on this, one of the concerns that council had at the time was it was the unknown, and we weren't sure what this would bring. After waiting a year or two, we've noticed a lot of other municipalities have opted in, and based on tonight's delegation, with the information that both delegations provided, it's quite obvious some of those fears that were in that initial decision that council made are alleviated in my mind. And so it is proper to reconsider this and have administration bring a report to confirm the other municipalities in our region. We're one region, Windsor, Essex, with 7 municipalities in the city of Windsor, and we're the only one that has still that's opted out. So, you know, in terms of the cards being stacked one way or the other, there's obviously enough comfort for those municipalities to make a decision to opt in. However, we need to do our due diligence. We need to have a report come back to council to see if there's any other red flags and make a decision opting in or out at that time. So I'm comfortable with coming back to council Without complicating things, I know Councillor Dowie, that's a lot of details that to cover, but those polls, we hear them on CKWW. Those polls, people can vote 10 times. To do a proper poll, like Ms. Evans says, you have to do it proper, scientific based with those consultants that does that. But again, the fact that a lot of other municipalities in our region have opted in, I'm sure they've done their due diligence as well and come to that decision. So I'm confident making a decision when the report comes back, waiting for that to come for council. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Altenhoff and Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, I guess I just would really like to articulate the point that administration in their review, please be critically thorough in all the data and all the sources where you seek out. Certainly include those bodies that you've we made reference to before. Certainly AGO has been cited tonight. We have to seek sources which do not present bias, whether it be an unconscious bias or not. We have to have basically the data brought before us, and I would hope that data could be as best as possible quantitative, so that we can get a good understanding. So I really just would ask administration to carefully look at all the appropriate bodies and agencies to acquire and gain as much information that can be presented to us as possible, because without that, then it's it's a tough decision. But having the information certainly can make it easier for everyone, and also for the residents, so that those who may side one way or the other can really have an understanding of the whole picture, which is, I think, important for everyone. So I would really appreciate that, and I know it's not an easy undertaking, but I think it would be certainly appreciated by all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to take the opportunity to just make it clear to anybody watching that I'm certainly not opposing this in the least. I just like to be informed in my decision making, and I know this is something that I don't think black market supply of cannabis to youth is the right way to go. I like the system that exists. I wish to support this, and so this is. But I want to also be a Democrat. We don't have billboards in this community. We don't have certain types of clubs because our residents have said over the years we don't want these things. And so respecting the history of our community and that we don't allow certain legal activities, I just want to be consistent with how we've treated other issues as well, and receiving that feedback as part of the decision. However, my personal feelings are that the private retailing sector was the better option. And so I do wish to, I'm certainly not in opposition to this discussion and going ahead with the proposed direction.
No, and I just want to weigh in, and basically that's why there's opportunities for us through the report, through administration, that where these at some point in time we're going to the industry is going to indicate where they want to locate and so forth, and there is some say in terms of the municipality. I agree with you, Councillor Dowie. I don't want it to be plastered in neon lights all over in terms of, you're right, in terms of your comments. But I firmly believe, I have the confidence that the administration will do their due diligence and come back with a comprehensive report that certainly at that point we'll be able to scrutinize, ask the questions and so forth. So it's not just a matter of saying here, or, away you go, open the doors. There's a process. And for me, the 2 or 3 years have evolved, and I was concerned about, the taxation piece. That's a pet peeve of mine. So I guess I got to get over that piece. But the other points of interest that were important to me as well is there increased policing, the loitering piece, is it going to create more, more havoc to the community in all of those? So looking at the, what's transpired in the industry across the province and in some of the communities that I've been able to have a conversation with certainly my peers. A lot of those have been alleviated, and there's no real big issues and so forth. I tend to agree that at some point in time, the field will level out to the, some businesses will thrive and some won't. And but that's left up to the business at hand to deal with those. But I really think that certainly working with administration, coming back with that report, it'll be comprehensive and start talking to obviously our neighbors and so forth. I think due diligence will play into this, and I guess we've all come to realization that it's a legal commodity. It's classified as agriculture. We've been through that and talking to OMAFRA and many others. And for those who've been at the AMO conference, it was pretty clear from the minister, that this is a product that whether people like it or don't like it, it's a legal commodity within the country. So we have to deal with it. And so I'll leave it at that. But certainly I'm looking forward to the report when it comes back from administration. The only thing that I would add to administration is the timing of the report. When is sufficient time that they can come back to council? Madam CAO.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor, and I can, going back to the conversation about the poll, without the word polling, which has a specific statistical connotation to it, we could have a conversation about it on PlaySpeak, which is the town's platform for having conversations about such matters. That will add some time to the process, but we're in council's hands on that. If that's what you would like us to do, it just won't be reported as a poll. There won't be any sort of questions that would put people in a situation of voting on anything. So I think that we probably, if we were going to do that, you need to leave those things up for a period of at least 30 days to allow people to have an opportunity to respond. And, then some additional time for staff to pull the report together along with other sources. So I'd say at least a couple of months.
Well, I think that's reasonable. And I think just with this meeting tonight, with the publicity of this meeting and with the media outlets, certainly the word is certainly going to travel through the municipality. So I think the PlaySpeak, I think, makes a lot of sense. Councilor Dowie?
Thank you, Worship, and thank you to the CEO. I mean, I think that'd be ideal. I mean, I wasn't expecting a report back in a couple of weeks. So if that information could just be relayed in parallel with the authoring of the report, that would be. I wouldn't want to add to the timeline. And if having such a consultation does add to the timeline, then for me, I mean, I'm willing to just accept emails from residents and have phone conversations as a means of getting their feedback. I mean, it's not that important to me. I just wanted, I want to be informed, and there are other ways that I can be informed. But I thought that would have been, just as you said, the PlaySpeak would be a great tool in which to centrally collect the comments that the residents may have.
Yep, that makes sense to me. Thank you for that, Madam CAO. Okay. I got to call a question, I believe, on the last one. All in favor for administration to review and bring back report. And I think PlaySpeak, I think if we can add that in there so that we should maybe put a 30-day window. So I'm hoping to have you come back. Where are we? Would it be possible the second meeting in May?
I think, excuse me, had your worship through you to council. I would probably push it into June. If we're going to have a community conversation, we got to give people a chance to have that, and then give administration a chance to report.
Okay, I'd like to have at least concrete for our
Yep.
audience and
Yes.
for others to have at least a concrete kind of a date where we can bring this up to us. So the first meeting of June would make more sense then.
I believe so, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councilor Dowie?
Thank you, Worship. Certainly, I did not intend to push it out. So if this is a burden, then I'm certainly happy to walk back what I asked for and just collect the comments through just our normal channels.
Well, okay, excuse me. I'm sorry to do this over the, don't try to review the methodology on the floor here. I mean, I guess if council is, because I believe that the Place Speak platform is probably the most efficient way rather than emails and phone calls to individual councils. So if you're happy to do that concurrently to the extent that staff wouldn't necessarily have to take all of that Place Speak response and try and get it into an administrative report, that those could be separated and that would meet your requirements for reporting out, then I would not want to, we've got the technology. It's more efficient than emails and individual.
No, I agree 100%.
So I wouldn't want to burden you with that situation.
And plus we'll get the information. I think that's the key piece. Yes, Councilor Altenhoff?
Through your worship, yes, I think that's, you raised that point. All this input's going to come to kind of one central, I'll call it directory. It can be distilled accordingly and then reported out to everyone. So I appreciate what the CAO's kind of suggested. I know it perhaps does add a bit of extra time, but I think it also makes the study a bit more thorough, certainly gets more data from other sources. It would be great, certainly, if we can ensure that it's from the whole spectrum of the community, but we can't govern that. But I think that may be the best way to obtain, from what the CA was kind of presented, attain data accordingly from our residents. Certainly, we cannot, and I know it was never indicated, but we still have to do our diligence in looking at other boards, governing bodies, agencies, health units, AGOs, and so forth. So I think what the CAO has recommended, even if it does add a bit of extra time, it's going to be a more thorough report, which is, I think, everything we all want. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess the only thing I'll ask, I think you've got enough information to administration to bring that to bear. So if you're comfortable with that, then I'll certainly call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimous. And also, if I could have a motion to acknowledge receipt of presentations given by both Sam and Robert Katzman and Melissa Bowe. Deputy Mayor Bichetti, Councilor Dowie, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried as well. Okay, so I know the delegations are here. You're more than welcome to attend the rest of the meeting, but I think you've gotten certainly the gist of the meeting this evening. And so anyway, the first, I'll say there's two phases to this. The first one's been cleared, and so we're waiting till administrations will come back with the final report, and then a decision will be made in the very, very near future.
Sounds like a sensible decision to me.
Okay, Well, I appreciate it, gentlemen, both of you for
Thank you,
coming
Have
out
a
this
nice
evening.
evening.
Thank you.
And have a nice evening. And Melissa, thank you as well. And I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good evening. Okay, members of council, then we'll move on to communications. We've got 28 pieces of communication. If I could have certainly a motion to receive said communications. Moved by Councilor Houston, supported by Councilor Jobin. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Members of council, is there any information items that you want to bring forward? Okay. The only item for me to give consideration to is item 23 and 24. That's from the town of LaSalle and town of Amherstburg, and also the county of Essex did support it as well. And that's the three-digit suicide prevention hotline.
So, Mayor, didn't we adopted this last meeting, I believe.
Did we? I'm gonna, yeah, we did. Okay. Then no need, because I really believe this is an important issue, and certainly the pandemic in particular has really opened up our eyes in terms of certainly mental illness. Okay, so no action required. Committee minutes, we have the minutes of the business improvement area of March 17th. If I could have a motion to adopt those minutes as presented. Councilor Houston, moves, support, Councilor Jobin. Any comments, questions or comments on those minutes? Heard none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried, thank you. Reports, first reports, delegation of authority, reopening of the Ontario Act of Violations. I'll ask the clerk to bring that report forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report here this evening is asking for council's authorization for the town to be represented at an upcoming legal proceeding involving a notice of first appearance, if you will, with regards to a ticket that was issued by the town by law enforcement officer under the Reopening Act. It's anticipated that we could receive further and other such notices and or other proceedings. And this report is simply asking that under the direction of the Director of Planning Building Services, that the director be authorized and empowered to provide direction to the bylaw enforcement officer when attending these legal proceedings in relation to the Opening Act or any other provincial legislation or municipal bylaw, and that our delegations of power policy be amended in accordance with the bylaw to allow for this delegation of authority.
All right, members of council, what's the pleasure of council? Move, Councilor Dowie, support Councilor Altenhoff. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. Our second report is prepared by our Fire and Emergency Services, and that's the Medical Tiered Response Enhancement. I'll call upon our chief. There he is, Chief Bondi. I bring that report forward.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to council. As council is aware, Fire Services participates in the medical tiered response through agreement with Essex Windsor EMS. This report is just intended to make council aware of some enhancements to that response by our service. Currently, Fire Services has medical equipment deployed on 2 trucks at each station, with response to calls being provided by 1 truck from the closest station, as well as the chief, deputy chief, and fire prevention officer when available, with backup provided by the 2nd truck at that station. As the command vehicles are typically the first Fire Services units to arrive on scene, redeployment of the medical equipment from the 2nd truck at the station to each of the command vehicles with purchase of a third set of equipment will provide better patient outcomes with minimal cost to operations and provide enhanced service to the town's residents. In short, in our time, since we've been tracking our response times and arriving on scene, the command vehicles are typically there up to minutes quicker than our engines are, although our engines get there very quickly. Like our normal response is quite good. We just feel it can be better, and we're trying to achieve that by redeploying the medical equipment. So I'm available for any questions if there are any from council.
Any questions to the chief? Okay, motion on the recommendation. Councilor Jobin, Councilor Houston. Any questions or comments? I just want to add, I think this is a great idea. I fully support this. And for many, probably Deputy Mayor Bichetti, you might have been at council early at the time. Our fire services chief were the first ones to have not only the CPR but the defib on a truck. We were kind of a pilot, for the whole region, including before the city of Windsor. And so it's I think it's again leading the charge, and I think whatever we can do, in particular to save lives, I think that it's certainly good. Any additional piece of equipment that we can put out in the field, I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
Just wanted a little bit of history in terms of we were the first, and we seem to be the first in a lot of things. But anyway, thanks for certainly the report. There's no further questions or comments. Then all in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Members of Council 3A, we've dealt with an early delegation. We'll move on to the second report prepared by the Planning and Building Services, and I'll call upon our Mr. Hillman bring his report forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an application similar to ones that have come previously to council for a property at 11957 Tecumseh Road. On the south side of the road, there's a 3-story apartment going up, comprising approximately 32 units. And the community improvement plan, thank you, Sean, that applies to this area of the town offers a number of incentives to encourage the redevelopment of the lands throughout the Tecumseh Road corridor. And one of them is a consideration for a grant back on the municipal tax portion that increases on a piece of property from pre-development taxes to post-development. In the case of the property in question, that would amount to approximately, was almost $30,000 per year. We've had a few of these applications come forward. It's for multi-use type development, residential, and it's only for 5 years. And again, Mr. Mayor, it is on the municipal portion of the tax bill. And the application has been filed with us. We have reviewed it, and we believe that it fulfills the requirements as established in the council approved community improvement plan to this area. Mr. Mayor, that is the thrust of the report that is in front of council, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions to Mr. Hillman on the report? I hear none. All in favor? Or we need to move it first? Or did we? Yeah. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti, supported by Councilor Houston. On the report, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. Next report's also prepared by Mr. Hillman. It's a site plan agreement. And Mr. Hillman, if you want to bring that report forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a property that's located at 2545 North Talbot Road. And you'll see an image coming up on the screen just east of the intersection with Walker Road. It had gone through a rezoning process approximately a year and a half ago, 2 years ago with council. And the owner is now coming forward to construct on the site 2 buildings. And the application before you takes into account, thanks, Sean, the location of the buildings, parking areas, identification, hard surfacing, curbing, stormwater works for the property. And as part of the review process, there will be ultimately security provided to ensure that all the obligations are fulfilled. So the application that has been brought to council is for consideration of approval. And there's a resolution detailing the conditions to the approval. Mayor.
All right. Any questions or comments to Mr. Hillman? Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Mayor, Mr. Hillman, are there any obligations to provide any green space on that site plan? I see a lot of parking. Sometimes of these structures and development, there is grass and green space, but I don't see it on the map, or it's hard to see if there's any included.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yep, it is difficult to see on, Sean, if we were to go to page attachment 2A, page 179, you'll see areas that are, yes, right where the hand is. Thank you, Sean. Those areas, so along North Talbot Road is landscaped, and along the edge treatments of the property, there is a landscaped provision that's provided, somewhat typical of this type of development in that area. So where it faces the front and the public portion of the property, there will be landscaping. It does look like significant parking, but it is characteristic of these types of developments in that area.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. That helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Jobin.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Hillman, can you just remind us what is going in those buildings again?
The owner is still looking at a number of tenants, but there is a range of some commercial uses. I believe there was consideration for an office use right now. And there are some light industrial uses that could go into that property. So it's a mixed zoning. And he is putting it up largely on speculation. But it is, as you can see from the report, considerable floor space that's being provided. So each building is 14,000 square feet. And they can be broken into a number of units.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that was my question. I was gonna have, that's good. Because I think it is business park designation, right? Okay, any further questions or comments? And then I need a motion on the report. Moved by Councilor Houston, supported by Councilor Dowie. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. All right, the next is a report 2118-18, limit use of agricultural zone A settlement areas, results, and that's the results of the public meeting and certainly adoption of bylaw. Mr. Hillman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council will recall that in October of 2020, a public meeting was held in accordance with the Planning Act. And that flowed from an administrative report to council recommending that the bylaw be amended, the zoning bylaw, as it relates to lands within hamlet areas that are zoned for agricultural use. So their intended long-term urban use has not happened. They continue to be zoned for agricultural purposes pending the resolution of the form of development that's to happen. And we were seeking, we were recommending that the bylaw be amended to restrict intensive agricultural type uses that tend to frustrate the opportunities for redevelopment in the future. And those would include livestock intensive operations, greenhouse operations, and mushroom operations. Public meeting was held. The report summarizes the public meeting that was held in October of 2020 to hear input on that. And there were a number of issues that were raised that were summarized in the report, but one in particular that council, after some consideration, asked us to look into was the concept of the issue was raised that there are some circumstances with homes on agriculturally zoned lands that would like to have almost like recreational greenhouses, or a greenhouse that offers the opportunity to do small scale growing. And so we did look into that, and what we concluded was that not unlike accessory buildings that are allowed in the agricultural area, that there was some merit in allowing a very small scale. And what we're proposing is a 750 square foot type greenhouse building, which is comparable to the maximum footprint that one could have for an accessory garage, for example. And felt that it was appropriate under the circumstances, because some areas may be situated in a sort of a holding pattern for some time, and that the person who did raise this at the public meeting, we felt there was merit in the consideration. So the one nuance to the bylaw that we think warrants consideration is to allow a very limited small scale greenhouse type development that would be deemed accessory to a residential use. And other than that, the recommendation stands that we believe it's appropriate to fundamentally prohibit greenhouse, mushroom farm, and livestock intensive uses on agricultural lands that are inside of the urban settlement areas that are delineated in the official plan. So that is the recommendation, Mr. Mayor, and a bylaw has been put on the agenda for consideration. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hillman. Questions or comments? Yes, Councilor Jobin.
Okay, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Hellman. So a couple of different parts here. I find it interesting, the concern or the consideration to the 70 square meter greenhouses for to be permitted as an accessory building. As most of the parties in those discussions were or have concerns about light emissions and what's growing in any of the greenhouses. So these 70 square meter facilities could grow cannabis. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, the bylaw does not regulate the type of crop intended to grow. Now, in relation to lighting characteristically is associated with your larger scale commercial operation greenhouses. So keep in mind, this would be an accessory greenhouse. So accessory means it's exclusively devoted to the main use, which is a house, and it's incidental to that use. So really, it's just being reflective of the fact that there may be circumstances where a homeowner may, in an agricultural area, want for their own use, growing of product. It does not regulate what can be grown in the greenhouse.
Okay, thank you for that. I just needed that clarified. And so the second part is that this is a housekeeping process this evening, and we've already gone through a public process, but there is an upcoming meeting coming April 27th. Can you just clarify the differences between tonight's process and the upcoming process, as there is some confusion since that posting has gone out, so some questions have arose from those two different processes.
Absolutely, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Very good question, and we recognize that there is the potential for some confusion. So with the adoption of the new official plan, brought into place a clarification on how to regulate certain intensive operations, and specifically with respect to greenhouses, with respect to cannabis greenhouse operations. Mushroom operations were previously dealt with in the former official plan. What the new official plan speaks to is that for a greenhouse operation, they are permitted as of right in the agricultural area, but they are now required to be subject to site plan control, which is a separate bylaw that is on for this evening. Okay, that was not the case previously. There was no policy basis to give consideration to that. The second important part is The new official plan establishes that cannabis greenhouse operations are not permitted as of right throughout the agricultural area. They are permitted on a case-by-case consideration through a rezoning process that has a number of criteria associated with it that would be considered prior to a favorable decision by council. So in order to ensure that someone doesn't get ahead of the policy environment that has now been put in place, we want to make sure that the bylaw clearly establishes greenhouses for cannabis operations are not permitted as of right in the zoning bylaw, and clarify that mushroom operations are not permitted as of right in the zoning bylaw. And that is reflective of the new official plan. So that's a public meeting that we'll be having in a few weeks, and it's in order to implement the new official plan and basically bring into the zoning the policy environment that's now been created. So it's a slightly different from tonight. Tonight is a bylaw that's considering how do we regulate and prohibit certain intensive uses inside the hamlet area for agricultural uses. I hope that helps clarify
Yes.
that.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Brian, in terms of the urban area or the hamlet, if we use some examples like Banwell Road corridor, there's homes there that are residential that under this bylaw will be able to do, as you said, a greenhouse. But again, how close do we have restrictions in terms of school? We have a high school right across the road there. And will there be any odors, any smells? We get a lot of complaints now with the farming community with, things happening when the wind blows and there's issues there. But the odor smell of these operations should be a consideration, and why that's not considered a restriction, just like mushroom. And we're allowing that in the hamlet area.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be clear, we are not promoting cannabis greenhouse operations. These are what's being put on the table for this evening is consideration of someone who would like to do a greenhouse behind their house for their own use. So it's an accessory use. And it's not of the same scale as the commercial greenhouse operations or a cannabis greenhouse operation. Now, when council has regard to the bylaw in a few weeks, the public meeting, it will be at that point that any kind of greenhouse operation is not permitted. Okay, so there will be no greenhouse operations permitted without any form of a rezoning on a go forward. So what's been put on the table this evening is really in response to a request from the public to allow for some flexibility for someone to have a greenhouse behind their home of a small scale. It's certainly not for a cannabis greenhouse operation, and it's not for a full scale greenhouse that you would have lit. We're talking about something that's just probably slightly larger than a 2-car garage.
As a follow-up supplementary, who will enforce that should that individual decide to expand and do something in the black market or whatnot? Like, who oversees that? Would that be the town, or would that be the, what level of government or agency would oversee any complaints?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not exactly sure what you mean in reference to black market. A building permit would be required for the building.
Well, what I mean is, you said it's for use for self, right? If they're going to grow, it's for themselves, the owner himself. But if they start growing more than the capacity is allowed, or whatever the thing is, who will oversee that if there's a complaint that they're producing more and it's for sale?
May I just jump in here? Yeah, Joe, he's speaking to growing. It'd be like tomatoes beside your mom and dad's house or in your backyard. But why I understand your question is what's stopping them from actually, instead of growing tomatoes and cucumbers, it being cannabis.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you for the clarification.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the intent is agricultural product. As I said, cannabis of any type in a greenhouse will not be allowed once the follow-up bylaw is considered.
That would be
the question of black market and other conditions, I think you probably have seen a number of communications on council's agenda over the past number of years that there is a separate issue around licensed operations that have nothing to do with the matters that are before council or coming before council. And that relates to the regulatory framework that the federal government has set up around cannabis production, either medically or for commercial. And that's somewhat of a separate issue.
Yeah, that would become an issue with Health Canada and police, and some of the issues that are certainly you're referring to. Some of the those who had received licenses in Norfolk County has been notorious, where expanded growth beyond licensing, and so that's been that's a Health Canada issue, and it's under the purview of policing.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to make, in terms of reassurance that, moving forward on this, that we do have that oversight.
Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. And really, my question is through to the administration. It's really building a bit on the comments that have just been made. Understanding that communities and neighborhoods don't want environmental impacts resulting from new builds. And so I guess my question really brings it back to the enforcement piece. So understanding that this, what we're considering tonight, is specific to greenhouses. It is not involving any other open air crop, for example. But, is there a mechanism at play for those kinds of considerations? I know we had an issue in the urban part of town where the Ministry of the Environment was the identified enforcement agency, but they were selective in their enforcement. They said the municipality can get into the business if they really want to deal with these issues. And so I was upset to get that response from them. And ultimately, I'd hate to see, a new crop that causes smell, causes pollen or anything of that nature on an overwhelming basis to move in to a settlement area without an appropriate enforcement mechanism. I'm wondering, is there a mechanism that we'll be turning to look at these issues separate from the greenhouses that we're considering tonight?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To be clear, I think just to maybe back up for a moment, for this evening, really the intent of the bylaw is to restrict intensive buildings of an agricultural form in the urban area. Really for the clear purpose not to prejudice and frustrate the future urban redevelopment of these lands, because there can be a major investment from these intensive operations. But as it relates to the notion of enforcement around nuisances, there is a regulatory environment in Ontario under the Normal Farm Practices Act. And that is actually the mechanism that is used to determine, is a farm practice deemed normal? And that could have nuisances related to dust, odor, and a full range of impacts that can be perceived by the recipient. And it's a process that doesn't generally involve the municipality as much as it involves the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, a complainant, and an operator. And that really is, under the agricultural system, how a lot of these matters are dealt with. So for tonight, really the issue was what type of agricultural buildings could be put into the urban area that is awaiting redevelopment for urban use. The consideration wasn't as much around what types of crops can be grown. That is under even normal zoning consideration, agricultural uses are allowed of all types in the open air.
Yeah, because really, when you talk about the, I call them the urban greenhouse, you can buy them. They're lean-tos. I mean, if you were to go through the old town and that, you'll see some. They're not that big. They're maybe 20, 30. They might be 10 feet by 12 or 15 by 10. And a lot of them are lean-tos on sides of garages and so forth. And mostly it's that recreational gardener that wants to get his tomato plant started a little earlier and certainly so forth. I agree with you, Mr. Hillman. I think this bylaw here, it's more on, the livestock piece and all of those other pieces that just don't make sense to me in urban areas.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could, as a follow-up to that, this is exclusively for lands that are zoned agricultural, the bulk of which are of a fair significant size, and currently have a house sitting on them, and are used primarily in our region for soybean, cash crop, corn, that type of rotation. So, and really this request was put into consideration as a result of a request made by the public. It seemed reasonable.
Yeah.
If there's a high degree of discomfort, it's, at the whim of council, of course, how to deal with that. But we are certainly strongly recommending that the bylaw be amended to prohibit the mushroom operations, greenhouse operations, and livestock intensive operation on land zoned agricultural inside our hamlet areas.
Makes sense. Okay. If there's no further questions or comments, then a motion to certainly adopt this report. Councillor Dowie, Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. Next, move on to site plan control, and that's a Roscon Industrial Drive, known as 5605 and 5635, Roscon Industrial Drive. And Mr. Hillman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll have Sean maybe just go to, if you would please, page 200, attachment 1 from the report. And then we'll proceed to maybe attachment 2B. Mr. Mayor, this is a property that's located just at the most southwesterly end of Roscon Industrial Drive. And it's an odd shaped property. It's outlined in red on the attachment. Currently, you'll see the resolution as something of a rather long resolution because we're dealing with a unique issue here. 5605 and 5635 had been created as separate lots some considerable time ago. As part of this development, 5605 has acquired 5635, and basically the operation is expanding onto the adjacent lands. Because of the nature of the configuration of the site, a number of easements that are on the property, some of which are municipal in nature, there is an effort to cause these two properties to consolidate into one property, which would be the area now outlined in red. When a lot is created by consent under the Planning Act, there's actually no simple mechanism to reverse. It's called a once a lot, always a lot creation under the Planning Act. So we have to break the consent, as we say. So you'll see in the report, there's small triangular pieces of land along the road allowance that would be conveyed to the municipality. It's not the identical lot any longer, and the lots merge into one. So that really simplifies the approval process from a site plan approval perspective. So ultimately, having said all that, what's proposed, if we go to the next drawing, Sean, is the construction of a building. And sorry, the orientation shifts here. So you can see the end of Roscon Industrial Drive. This is overlaid on top of the air photo. There's a building that's proposed just to the, if you were to leave Roscon and head west, so it'd be south of the existing building. Standard industrial building that's associated with the current operation. And it's basically going to provide for a 37,000 square foot building, so a considerable size building, which is existing. The proposed is 16,000 square feet. Sufficient parking, which is hard surfaced and curbed. Existing and proposed fencing and landscape buffers are proposed. This area is still serviced by septics. We won't have sewers there for some time, so that is shown on the development as well. And of course, full consideration for stormwater management. One minor issue, Mr. Mayor, There is a current easement that exists just along the, that where the hand is moving along the, abutting the residential property and making its way back out to Roscon Industrial Drive. Over time, that we have different municipal infrastructure that has ended up in that easement. So as part of this approval process, there's some clarification on easement documents that's being finalized as well. Mr. Mayor, I believe that's a summary of the development proposal and the approval that is sought through the planning report.
Okay, so you have the certainly the motion before you. And all of the required municipal securities and everything have been, they're in play. So the wish of council on the recommendation, move Councilor Houston, Councilor Dowie. If there's no further questions or comments, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. All right, I think we're done with Mr. Hillman. Well, he was busy. Now we'll move on to Public Works, Environmental Services, and first report is our asphalt paving tender award of 2021. Bring that report forward. Our director, Mr. Bartnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sean, if you can bring up the map. So Sean is just going to bring up a map depicting the locations of our 2021 asphalt program. So the report before you this evening is recommending the asphalt paving tender be awarded to Coco Paving Limited in the amount of $956,300. There were two tender submissions received on March 11th. One was Coco Paving and the other was Millam Corporation. The low tender came in under budget by about $127,000. And the works are scheduled to commence in June and July. And with that, if there are any questions.
Any questions from members of council on the report? Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I guess through you to Phil. Great to see that, you know, we've got $126,000 surplus, and had a conversation with Kirby today just regarding the surplus and if there's any opportunity for us to use that against any, you know, roads that are on the list next year. So just for any of the public that are looking to, can you provide a little more information, you know, regarding that surplus and you know, if there is any opportunity for us to use that on any other road projects?
Yeah, so through Your Worship to Councilor Houston, so the town does life cycle and put money aside every year within our roads life cycle reserve fund. So any money that is not used that has been previously allocated or budgeted for shall go back in those reserves. You know, we do try to stay within or under budget. The asphalt program is a little challenging at some times because it all depends on the amount of thickness that is taken off or the amount of millings that are taking off. So even a few millimeters for you know, hundreds of meters or even kilometers can start to add up pretty quick. So we do like to have a contingency that's in there, and we do like to see the amount coming in under budget, and we try to hold the contractor to that. But like I said, sometimes sites dictate a little bit more millings and a little bit more repair work than really anticipated. But any money that is not used would be put back into the roads life cycle reserve fund.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing to remember too, and that it's happened in the past, when you get a certain spike in oil, especially on the bitumen, usually the heavy construction, you know, they come calling and say, and you know, we've got to add a certain amount. So I don't know if it's still in the tender. But I know in years past when oil, went sky high, oil it seems to be on the move again and so forth. So we have to be cognizant also of that. Any other questions to Mr. Bartnick on the asphalt contract? If not, then a motion to adopt the report as presented. Councillor Jobin, Councillor Altenhoff. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. Next is the tar and chip tender award. Mr. Bartnick.
Thank you, through you, your worship. This report is recommending the 2021 tar and chip tender be awarded to Shepley Road Maintenance Limited in the amount of $198,050. There was only one tender submission that we received on March 11th. The low tender, or the only tender, came in over budget by about $1,500. The streets within the program this year, Sylvester Drive, Jamsil to County Road 19, Ruston Road, the full extent, and Old Castle Road south of Highway 3, and some crack sealing throughout the town. Shepley Road Maintenance has been awarded the tar and chip tender by the town since 2012, and the works have been completed in a professional and timely manner. And these works are scheduled to commence in June and July again of this year.
All right, any questions to Mr. Bartnick? Yes, Councillor Jobin.
Thank you, and through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Bartnick. So tar and chip, over the years, some people are very familiar with the process, and it's also very foreign to some people. I was hoping that we could maybe formulate a Q&A that we could put on our social media. It's a process, something like why tar and chip? Why not full paving? I know why through experience, the rural roads, the make of the road, and just the process of it, because I'll often get a call and say, this is ridiculous. They did one portion now, when are they coming back? And then the dust. I feel like if we just inform them ahead of time of the process, and it'll just alleviate some of the stress and some of the questions, and just give people the information, step 1, step 2, step 3, and why we do it. I think it'll alleviate some of the comments and concerns and complaints. That's possible. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, your worship, that's something definitely we can put together a nice information packet or an information sheet for the residents.
Okay, any further questions or comments to Mr. Bartnick on his report? If not, a motion then to adopt the report as presented. Councillor Jobin and Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Next is the report, Mr. Bartnick, and it's on Manning Road improvements, and that long-awaited phase 2. So if you want to bring that report forward.
Thank you, your worship. So this report before you today is recommending the Manning Road improvements phase 2 tender be awarded to Shayrock Construction Group in the amount of $4,467,500. There's also a recommendation that funding allocations reflecting over a 1.7 million decrease in the budget be adjusted throughout 5 different reserve funds. And then a one-time transfer from the road life cycle reserve to the drains life cycle reserve of $1,265,600 be approved. So just a little history on what phase 2 actually consists of. So it consists of underground servicing, including the enclosure and redirection of the East Town Line drain into the recently constructed Lakewood Park channel, filling the existing drain along the west side of Manning Road, and the installation of a local storm sewer and replacement of the existing water main. So the 1.7 million in savings is attributable to one, tendering it out fairly early and getting a good competitive price. But also we did remove a component. We were going to install a storm sewer overflow on St. Thomas, but we thought it was better served under phase 3 of the project as opposed to phase 2. So that attributes to about $300,000 in savings. So in reality, we're about 1.4 million under budget. Phase 3 for council and the public, that would consist of the surface works, road reconstruction, boulevard restoration, pathways, bike lanes, and that is tentatively scheduled for 2022, subject to final council approval and funding. So for phase 2, the tender closed on March 4th. We had 5 local contractors submitting a bid. Shea Rock was the low tender, and they have successfully completed other projects in town, including the County Road 11 North Sanitary Sewer Extension in 2019, as well as the Highway 3 Walker Road water main replacement project, which spanned over the late 2020, early 2021. So construction on phase 2 is scheduled to commence in early July. And with respect to the financials, so the total project cost of phase 2 is a little bit north of 5.6 million. But we also wanted to highlight that the town has accumulated over $3 million in OSIF grant funds over the last few years that will be used towards this project.
All right, well, this is great news. I know that there'll be a lot of folks that are going to be happy to see the ditch gone and a couple of the bridges that are pretty wonky, as you know, that'll be gone. The only, I have a question though. I know the St. Thomas piece that we're going to push over to phase 3. Is that all part of the process that we were going to redirect some of the flows from Green Valley to the channel so that the downstream benefit would be towards a little river, I guess, up to Lesbros Road, where we had some issues where that water would flow?
Yes, to your worship, that is correct. So that was one of the projects that was identified within the storm drainage master plan. However, bringing in that water into the East Town Line drainage area itself, it does require an update to the drainage report. So they're kind of a concurrent process that is currently ongoing, and so we felt it perhaps it was better suited as part of phase 3 until we can get the Drainage Act reports finalized.
Okay, I knew there had to be a reason in those terms, but yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense and so forth. Good news for 2022 in particular. It'd be nice when you see the numbers, 1.7, decrease, because the early bids. Hopefully on the final piece we'll do the same, and especially those big projects where it really is a great benefit to go out early, and certainly the proof's in the pudding, as they say. So do I question Deputy Mayor or move the report?
Yeah, I'll move the report and then I just have a question.
Okay, move. Do I support Councillor Dowie?
Thank you, Mayor. Phil, or maybe to Tom Kitsko, regarding the one-time transfer from the road life cycle to the drains, is that more of a budget thing that you do? Is that administration discusses that? Why not keep it in the road life cycle reserve? I'm just wondering, what the thinking is when you do things like that. So I believe it's 1.2 million being transferred to the drains life cycle. Is it kind of a in and out type thing in terms of overall budgeting?
Mr. Kitsos.
Thank you, and through the mayor to Deputy Mayor Joe Bicchetti. So this is because this work is not really a typical drains improvement project. It's really initiated by the road work. We typically fund it through the roads life cycle reserve. So our annual allocation to our drains life cycle isn't an amount that is suited for the improvement type works that we would fund. So this is much greater than what we would see typically for drains works.
Okay, thank you. And like the mayor alluded earlier, it's a long time. I remember closing the ditch was on everybody's election platform going back to before Mayor McNamara was, I think he was a deputy mayor at the time in 2003. So we're looking at 18 plus years of finally seeing it now, and it's coming together. And like I say, that era is going to be, beautiful when it's all said and done. So we're looking forward to that work.
Yes, Councilor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. I want to echo that comment. I know this project is one that's cited as, town council commits to things and doesn't follow through. Here's the follow through. It's happening this year. I can't wait. And certainly when I ran in 2014, this is one I wanted to push, and I'm delighted that the day is coming to see this transformation. It'll be incredible. Really looking forward to it, and I say great job to the administration for timing this well, so that not only is it coming in under budget, but we're going to be seeing this, in a cost-effective phasing. We waited a bit longer, but the savings are there, and we'll be able to do more with those funds accordingly.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, when you look at the investments that have been made there, from the purchase of the park, the waterfront, the finishing of the waterfront, the infrastructure we put into the park, the pumping station, the parking lot, the roundabout. When you start adding that up, we're talking $30 to $40 million of work that have been done. Something in that area. My only other question, Phil, you had mentioned, okay, as you fill in the ditch and so forth, obviously we got to connect. Some of those homes have their sump pumps and so forth that are discharging into the ditch, and we need to connect that. So also the runoff or whatever runoff that'll become from the road in that, obviously that's part of the water itself. So the connection, actually, the water was still flow northerly, and then cross. I think where there is, a box culvert. There's two of them actually, but that one there will is that where the connection is going to be to just for those homes and that section of road? The rest, the upstream stuff, I get it. It's going to be around St. Gregory's where that comes in.
Yes, you're correct, Your Worship. So in the alignment of where the existing ditch is today, there will be a local sewer. I think at its largest, it may get up to about a 3-foot diameter. But the intent was to service those properties, the road, and as well as provide that kind of hydraulic disconnect from the park and the channel. And we're trying to utilize the park as a floodplain during some of those larger storm events. And so it's very important to, provide that separation. And I think we're also looking at kind of a duckbill flap gate on that local sewer. So, during those larger storm events, there's no surcharging in that system.
Yeah, because that would have been my concern, because I've seen where the Lakewood was flooded and it was over Manning Road in the ditch itself. So that's why we have engineers that have that all figured out for us. Well, anyway, that is tremendous news on that. So Deputy Mayor, it's been moved and supported, and so I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Before I sign off on this one, when do you anticipate this to start? Sometime in June or July?
So, Your Worship, we are waiting for the fish window to close. I think it's middle of July, but the contractor is very anxious to get started. So you might see some activity a few weeks in advance with mobilization and bringing equipment to site.
I think what we should do is give a prize if somebody does find a fish. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. So on the motion, all in favor? Oh, I already did that. Opposed, that's carried. All right, we're on to the clerk and the reading of bylaws.
Thank you, Mayor McNamara. The first bylaw we have is bylaw number 2021-20. This is a bylaw to amend the Town of Tecumseh's zoning bylaw for the former Township of Sandwich South area, as reported on earlier this evening. Bylaw 2021-21 is also a bylaw to designate site plan control areas as part of the area covered by the town's official plan in agricultural zone A, as also reported on earlier. We have bylaw 2021-22, which is a bylaw to provide for the adoption of the tax rates for municipal, county, and education purposes for 2021. We have bylaw number 2021-23, which is a bylaw to levy the special charge for the business improvement area for the year 2021. Bylaw 2021-24 is again a bylaw to amend the former town of our town's comprehensive zoning bylaw for those lands in the former Township of Sandwich South in the area of 5635 Roskin Drive, which was reported on previously to council. Bylaw 2021-25 is a bylaw to amend the appointment of members to the Board of Directors to the Business Improvement Area Board of Directors. This was reported on at a prior meeting of council. Bylaw number 2021-26 is a bylaw to authorize the signing of a funding agreement for the fire safety grant with the Ontario Fire Marshal, which was reported on previously to council. And finally, we have bylaw 2021-27, which is a bylaw to execute an agreement with the Ministry of Transportation for the dedicated gas tax funds for public transportation. We're respectfully asking for first and second readings to all of these bylaws, and if appropriate, third and final.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. 2 readings on those bylaws. Councillor Jobin, Councillor Dowie, on 2 readings. Any questions or comments? Having heard none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. 3 readings are now in order. Councillor Houston and Councillor Altenhoff. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Any unfinished business? Any new business? Holy smoke. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Altenhoff, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Mayor. As we were on the cusp of having that Riverside Trail meeting last week with all those delegations, I did receive a few phone calls asking about another trail that's on the docket for us, which is L'Esperance Road, just south of County Road 22. So just a question, maybe for information purposes. That trail that is being contemplated, is it from County Road 22 to what southerly limit?
Councilor, I should say Director Bartnick.
Thank you, and to you, Deputy Mayor. So the trail is on L'Esperance Road from County Road 22 all the way down to County Road 42. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
And the plan was to undertake a detailed design this year with construction commencing in 2022.
Thank you. And so just to follow up, and I know it's early on, but maybe for fall, we'll be here before we know it for budget. The residents are asking if, like the mayor mentioned a while ago, that we weren't into the sidewalk business 20 years ago. And the east-west corridor in Ward 4 and 5 are lacking. And to access that L'Esperance Trail, if we can coordinate something when that's being built so that residents are able to walk to that L'Esperance Trail safely in an east-west corridor. And there's one that's on Maisonneuve. There's a little stretch of sidewalk for a block or 2. If that can be considered at budget time to stretch it easterly to the L'Esperance Trail, and then perhaps look at Gwen one day to do that east-west, so those homes and residences are able to get to that trail safely. And so that was one of the requests people were saying is, that's great to do these trails, but how do we connect them? And so that's just one thing that we can consider at budget time. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to all of council, as well as administration and all those attending. I have the very sad news of indicating, although it happened a few weeks back, but nonetheless, the passing of Mr. Kyle Chinnery, and just to acknowledge his very significant involvement in our community. He was a snow angel. He was a referee for soccer, and I particularly really appreciated his attention to the youth in soccer, and as a referee, perhaps also acting as a bit of a teacher and a coach. As well, I was very impressed with him. He took a very active role in a number of town-related activities. I really believe for his age and for his cohort, he was a leader. He was a force for good, an example for many, and ultimately a really good and genuine person. And I wish to just certainly acknowledge him and his family in thoughts and prayers, and also for sharing Kyle with us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Altenhoff, for that. I know he was very close to the fire department here and did a lot of volunteer work there and as well. So thank you for acknowledging that. Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question, or somewhat comment / question, residents may be seeing new boxes from Canada Post in the community. I know they're mainly, there's some around my house and they're for parcels. So I certainly want to thank Canada Post for piloting this in our community, because it means fewer trips out to the Canada Post desk at the Shoppers Drug Mart. And just an opportunity to find these closer to home and 24 hours a day. With the advent of new boxes, however, we do see locations that may not be able to handle the volume. And at our public meeting a week and change ago about the Victoria School, the additional clustering of boxes at that site has been cited by many residents as being problematic. It's now so lengthy of a trip to get your mail that many residents just choose to drive to the box. It's really bringing new motor vehicles into a neighborhood that ought not to have that many as a result of the decisions at Canada Post. And so I'd like to see what we can do to encourage Canada Post to redistribute those boxes so that they're in locations closer to the residents that rely on them, such that the choice of a motor vehicle isn't the default option in which to go collect. And I do have some ideas for some underused sites, and certainly I'm hopeful that we might be able to communicate with Canada Post on this issue.
Okay, and I would only add that whatever development, final development on Friday too, is the boxes that will serve those people should be on their site. And so that's something that I think Mr. Hillman can deal with in the final site plan on that. So so that people there can be on their property, walk there and service their area. But those are good points. All right, any further new business? Oh, I see half a head there. Yep, Mr. Anthony.
Yes, through the mayor, I just wanted to report out on the happenings for Earth Day coming up.
Oh, yes.
So I'll just give you a little synopsis of what we're doing as a department and through the town. So we did contact Earth Day Canada. We registered the town Tecumseh as a partner. And they also will give us some promotional materials and graphics, which we can put on our website and social media. And also the town's logo will be added to the earthday.ca website. We are promoting the SWA's Earth Day a virtual scavenger hunt on recreational social media. And we'll be scheduling Earth Day social media posts on recreational Facebook and Twitter pages that will incorporate Earth Day.Canada graphics and messaging. We will also be promoting a contest on our social media, encouraging residents to share how they will be celebrating Earth Day. Request people send pictures. All submissions eligible for a draw of prizes. Prizes will include a grand prize where we'll plant a tree in the front yard by the Tecumseh Park staff. Second prize, tree planted in a local park by the Tecumseh Park staff, and winner will get to come and help with the planting. There'll be miscellaneous prizes, items purchased from local suppliers, and also some donations, and smaller prizes such as Tecumseh dollars. We had another curve thrown to us with the basically stay-at-home order, which again shrank the amount of people that could attend in group gatherings. So social media is going to play a big role, and I think we're putting together an Earth Day that the residents can participate in. Do something similar to what Councillor Tonio had spoke about in his conversation. Have everybody do something in their own property and their own areas to clean up. And then there'll be some stories about it. So I think staff have done an incredible job to get us ready to celebrate in some very, very difficult times.
Okay. Yeah, it's unfortunate. We sure miss the plantings that we used to do in Lakewood and McAuliffe, and we had in about 4 or 5 different areas in the community, and that was such a well-attended program. And hopefully 22 will change, and we'll try to make up for the years, and in particular that we're missing that opportunity. But I tend to agree, if there's areas within your properties or close by, it's if we all did our little part here and do it socially, distance and safely, go a long way. So I'm sure that the Parks Department through Leslie and will advertise that, and it's nice that the Canadian Earth Group are going to showcase, the town and so forth. So that's good news. Any further new business? All right, we need a motion to confirm the proceedings of our meeting this evening. Councillor Altenhoff and Councillor Houston. 3 readings, all in favor. Opposed, if any, that's carried. Any notices of motion this evening? None indicated. Next meeting is Tuesday, April 27th. We have a 5 o'clock public council meeting. That's a ZBA on 3425 11th concession. 6 p.m. we have public council meeting, ZBA housekeeping item, and 7 p.m. our regular council meeting. So with that, members of council and administration, the adjournment is now in order. Councillor Altenhoff and Councillor Houston, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. So once again, thank you very much, members of council and certainly administration. Heavy agenda, lots of questions, and a little bit of homework for administration as well. So for those viewing, thank you for viewing, and for all of us and the rest, stay safe, and till we meet again. Good night.